Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested, and I am here behind the scenes at the production of BattleBots Season 2. And this is the pit. This is where all the robot builders gather before their matches to prepare their robots for battle. We're going to get a chance to chat with some of the builders, some returning faces, and some new teams, learn about their robots, what makes them unique, and their strategies for the fights. Let's go check it out. This is insane. This robot's unlike any BattleBot I've ever seen. I'm here with Rob and Cyril, who have made the Walden Overlord. And it is, well, it's a humanoid robot. All right, so let's talk about, first of all, how the robot moves. It has two arms, it sits on a base, but how do the arms move?
We've copied the human anatomy as closely as possible. So if you look in it, you can see it's got shoulder balls, ball and socket joint in the shoulder. It's got deltoid muscles, biceps, brachialis, triceps. All of the rotator cuff muscles are represented. So anatomically, it's very correct. It has the same ligaments, same motor layouts. And also, if you look at the end of the motors, where the strings pull, you can see these transparent plastic tubes. These are springs, so it's springy like a person. It's not stiff like a traditional robot. That allows it to have all of these antagonistic motors, and it allows it to store energy and withstand impacts and behave much more like the human body would.
Right, the muscles and the ligaments of the human body are represented by the springs and the string,
yes.
Which you have
Kevlar spearfishing line.
Wow, so it's going to be really, really strong, yeah. And it looks like you have a ton of redundancy because it's not just one or two strings for each arm or each muscle.
Because it's so complex, things are going to break pretty fast. So the redundancy is a way to just keep going. So in fact, it's actually electrically 4 completely separate robots that share a physical body. There's 2 in the base, and there's 2 in the upper body. And as you can see, they can run independently. So if it gets split in half, the base can carry on and the torso can carry on kind of crawling along the ground.
Now that brings us to the rig you're using to actually control it. This is actually a puppeteered rig, which can be on 2 people or one person.
We can swap the harnesses and reconfigure and hot swap them.
So how does this rig work? Because you have a joystick at the end, but you also are mimicking your actual arm movements.
Yeah, the shoulder is too complex to just use a simple linear mapping. The elbow is a direct feed off the potentiometer, and then we modify it and remap it to the 6 motors that drive the elbow. That's a bit complicated because the bicep also affects the shoulder joint. Mm-hmm. The shoulder joint is more of a black box mapping. We run it through a series of positions. We move the rig into the same set of positions, and we grab motor space and rig space and then create a database, and then we interpolate between those points to generate about 40 data points to describe the degrees of freedom in the shoulder and how they correspond to the degrees of freedom in the rig. And then when you play it back through the system, it moves to those positions.
It's almost one-to-one movement, but a lot more power on the robot. Now, what is actually the weapon of the robot?
Strategy. We're not a big kinetic hitter.
Yeah.
And it'll be very interesting to see how it survives being hit. It's fully internally reinforced with Kevlar and Vectran, so it should take a few tons of force to split it apart. Weapon-wise, we have big metal poles, and we have big kind of comedy hammers. We're not sure we're going to use the hammer, because it's a bit heavy, and it'll just shatter if it gets hit by anything. But our strategy is best summed up by the idea of putting a stick through the front wheel of a bicycle.
Now, your robot itself also has a lot of moving parts. Is there a lot of fear of it getting tangled up?
Oh, yeah,
or of its wires or any of the electronics exposed?
If it lasts the whole bout, I will be astounded. It is far too complex. It is not how you traditionally do this, but we hope that, in the future it becomes a part of it. We'd love to start a humanoid class, and you got to start somewhere.
Right. It's something different, absolutely. Yeah. I'll let you get back to tweaking the robot and getting it prepared to fight. Thank you so much for sharing the robot with us, and good luck.
Thank you very much.
So this is Lisa Winter, and with Robot Action Leagues, your team, last year you guys had Plan X, which is a very memorable robot. There were lights, there was a brain, it got angry. What's your robot this year?
This year it's the bigger version of my old school favorite Tentomushi. So it's Mega Tento, and it literally is mega. This thing is huge. I can't even fit through the tunnel, so I have to go a different route. And it's a ladybug that lifts up, captures the opponent, and basically is like a blender.
what's underneath the hood of the Ladybug, like in its guts?
So there's a drum spinner inside.
Okay, awesome. So to keep it under the weight limit, what are the design decisions you have to make to have this huge profile, but also fit within design constraints?
Well, it's a pretty hollow robot, so it's basically this U shape and then a plastic sandbox, which is, moderately, it's not as heavy as steel, so we got some wiggle room there. And the back is all aluminum. There's some really thick aluminum in certain spots for strength, but it's not as strong as steel, but really this guy maneuvers so well, it can spin on a dime, so it's hard to get to the back of it.
And that's going to be important because you're attacking from the front and you really need to capture your opponent inside. Can you still have some offense without the Ladybug coming down?
Yeah, I mean, this can be totally raised and I still have that weapon right out there.
Have you guys done any testing with test robots to see what happens when you have 200 pounds of robot underneath there?
No, so like most people, there's hardly any testing. I did some drive testing, lifting, the motor spinning, and that weapon is so scary.
I can imagine with that huge drum spinner and the inside. Are you doing both the driving and the weapon control at the same time?
Yep, full control. I did this when I was 10, a smaller 60-pound version, and it's really good to be able to having your head 5 steps ahead of the plan of attack. So you go, you're going towards them and you lift it and you have this whole choreography.
It's like a dance, a death dance with other robots. Are there types of robots that you feel like your robot's going to be best against, or robots that you're fearing in the competition?
I definitely go around and look for bite-sized robots, make sure they fit in there. For the really tall ones, I can also partially lift up and hold it there, so it's not 0 to 1. I have full range of motion, and I can really hold up. And like I like to do with the smaller one is really sort of grab the top of an opponent and pull them back and try and flip them over.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you get paired up against swarms so you can trap a lot of small robots. That's awesome. It's great to chat with you again.
Yeah,
and good luck.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm here with Team Warhead. Now, if you guys remember from last season, Team Warhead was you guys had an eagle bot, right? With this big spinner on disc on top. It looks a little bit different this year. So Team Warhead here with Ian, Simon, and Van. Tell me about the design of Warhead this year.
Well, we've still got the spinner head. It's not quite on at the moment, and we've doubled the power of it, which was just masses of work. And the repairs we had from the Bite Force and the Stinger fight, months of rebuilds. But we just thought we'd throw an extra head in just for a thrill, like we had nothing else to do.
Yeah, so it has still that awesome, intimidating, almost talon-like, eagle-like grip on the side. But this new head, which is clearly a Tyrannosaurus head, does it actually bite down? Is that a new weapon?
Oh yeah, it bites down. It opens up to about 3 foot, so we'll get most other robots in. Yeah, it fully closes and has a serious flame effect.
So you got flame as well. Now, to have this additional weapon, you have to redistribute the power. Are you adding more motors? Is it driving off the same power as before?
I'll let him talk about that, but yeah, we're basically using the rotary weapon motors just to run the head. It's a very modular, it's a very adaptable machine.
Yeah, Ian, tell me about the functionality. How do you switch between the different weapon systems?
Yeah, it's actually quite easy. We've got a big plate in here, which we call a gear plate, and you can actually see at this point here that there would be a big bearing where the head would plug through. So there's a big drive system there that runs the hydraulic system. It's got the 2 big brushless motors in the back here. So really this brushless motor is just along for the ride, but this one is now powering just the hydraulic pump, which we use the head position hydraulic ram to actually use now to bite down with about 80 kilos, what's that, 180 pounds of force. It's more of a gripper really. Then you've got the big double flamethrower to add into that really, into the mix.
Yeah, I remember from last year, having the disc left you vulnerable to get picked up, to get pulled by other grippers. So was the idea to design this so you could also counter that?
Well, we've got a machine in the UK, the Razor, which is a big clamper piercer machine, and we were always used to that kind of clamping piercing robot. It's a very good principle. If you can get hold of another robot, you can spend a lot of time with them. You've got them under control, you've got them sort of in a grapple really, and it's quite a nice principle to work with. With a rotor, it's a very different thing. You've got that sort of instantaneous contact. It's very periodic, and then you sort of bounce off and come back. So really, these are 2 ends of the scale really. At one end, you've got the big gripper spending the time, and the other end you've got the instantaneous wrap of the big rotor.
That also changes your driving characteristics, how you're actually going to pilot it, and because with the rotor you got to spin it up and then attack your enemy. Here you can really lunge at them, grab them, burn them. Who's driving and how is that going to change how you drive it?
Yeah, the driving really with a big rotor, you want to come in like a comet. You know, a comet comes through the universe and it sort of strikes in and bam, and clears off again and gets some space. It needs the space of the arena to get up to speed, to keep that head speed up. Now, a big biter like this, as we saw with Razor, really very, very close quarters. It'll get in close to you, it'll work close, a bit like a boxer or a wrestler. It'll be really, really tight in on the body of the other machine.
So Van, you designed the other weapon system, the flame system. Tell me about the design of that and how it's supposed to actually damage other robots.
Well, hopefully it's going to be rather warm because we've got like a pretty good flame. It comes out about 4 foot, and in the head it's about, you know, this sort of wide. It's pretty damn smart. It comes out of 2 nozzles at the front here, so hopefully we're going to cramp onto them and fill the bot with flames and warm it up and make it nice and toasty, if you know what I mean. We've designed also flamethrowers, which are just down here, which sit in the arms themselves. They just sit in there, so we'll be able to have 2 configurations. When the spinning disc is on, we'll have 2 flamethrowers coming up and in and toast the wheels and toast the flying bots and all sorts. It should be really good.
In designing the flame system, you know, you said it goes 4 feet. That's going to be put on a great show.
Yeah.
Now, how does that compromise or balance with the intensity of the flame and actually damage being done?
The bigger the flame and the yellower the flame, it's like quite not so hot.
Yeah.
But as soon as the cans start running down a little bit, it runs more on the gas and it becomes nice and blue and hot. Yeah. And like when we had it in the workshop, we was there getting really toasty and started dripping with sweat. You know, it was pretty impressive.
Is the weight distribution also the same? Does it make it difficult to flip Warhead over?
Well, amazingly, it does still self-right. Luckily, in the early days, we designed a very, very big self-righting principle into this machine, and it seems to work with anything. This head is around about 28 kilos, so I don't know what that is in pounds, 50, 60 pounds or so.
You mentioned some of the competitors you faced last year in that battle box. Are there any that you look forward to facing this year that you want to see Warhead go up against and take a bite out of?
I think really the showcasing of the BattleBots really is the big thing, and to have that opportunity to have a robot that's got a lot of animation, a lot of showcase to it, to show off to the crowd. You really want a battle which is with another similar machine, and today we're drawing against a great machine, the Overlord machine from Rob Knight, fantastic machine with loads of animation, big animation as well. So it's going to be a bit like the Postman and the Jack Russell kind of battle really, with the biting of the arms and all that.
Good luck. Can't wait to see that fight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks.
Cheers, thank you.
So something interesting that happened from last year to this year is that teams that previously worked together now have spun off in their teams of their own. From last year's team overhaul, now comes Team Danger 4, and I'm here with Dane and Frederick from Team Danger 4. You guys have a new robot this year. Your own robot called Road Rash. Now that reminds me of a video game I love playing on the Genesis, Road Rash. Is that the inspiration for this robot?
That's part of the inspiration. Dane once made a fitness trainer that used the video game Road Rash to help get through it, but mostly it's, you know, trying to recreate just the feeling of crashing a motorcycle on the highway. We want to recreate that feeling for our opponents in the battle box. So there's sparks, there's tires, there's motorcycle and automotive parts everywhere. It's just going to crash into people, and then we have no idea what's going to happen next, but it should be really exciting.
It's a ramming robot. Is that what you're saying?
It's ramming, but we've got this giant twin angle grinder on top just for going in there, cutting their electronics, getting to their radios, sending sparks and dust and everything flying everywhere.
Now, to prepare for ramming speed, you have an interesting drive system. 2 actually. One is more of a conceptual drive system. That's what you have up here. Could you explain to me, Dane, how this works?
We've got an electromagnetic drive system. There are no moving parts. Right now, this is a linear induction motor. If you took a big motor and ripped it open and splayed it out, that is what we have. The contact patch between us and the floor is humongous. So we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to push a magnetic field across in a sequential fashion. These rollers keep us off the floor. We have a little test fixture to kind of indicate that. This is our 1/2 fence, 1/2 science aluminum on a bearing test fixture. So if it's placed on the linear induction rail, so we've got a radio, so we're pushing a magnetic field, there's nothing contacting that. Each of these can produce 120 pounds forward force while creating 600 pounds down force. So this is a kind of a new novel drivetrain. We're trying to implement it. We have a swappable drivetrain for a wheel drivetrain if the floor, it turns out, is made of a ferrous material, we can switch to a wheeled mode.
Right, so not knowing the material, because this machine's obviously going to work better on certain types of floor. Do you know what the material is of the BattleBot?
We know it's some sort of mild steel cheese.
We also know that it's covered in about 1/8 of an inch of paint, so it makes things a little more interesting out there to see if we can actually get the magnetic permutation that we're looking for.
So the potential here is 110 pounds forward moving, or per drive side, but you also have 6 times that pushing you onto the ground, which prevents your robot, Road Rash, from getting flipped.
Correct.
But if that's a maximum potential. Now, can you amplify that with more power, or are you constrained also by your electric systems?
Homemade boost converters. These give us the volts we need to drive. We're limited to about 14 kilowatts each of boost power, which is that's a half a Prius.
Yeah, that's a lot of volts. How long can you drive this for?
About 3.5 minutes.
Well, good thing the rounds are about 3 minutes each, so you can at least last for a full round. That's awesome. And you have an alternate drive system, so if this doesn't work, then you can also just go back to conventional wheels?
Correct, yeah, correct.
The big reason that we did the wheeled version and even brought it was just so we could develop the weapon system independently and modular to the linear induction system. We also knew that the arena conditions could change horribly. There have been hundreds of problems with people trying to use magnets in the past. Beta, for example, very famously has gotten stuck to the floor every time they've tried to roll out. So we wanted to make sure we had a backup plan and a working robot in case electromagic doesn't work.
What's the best case scenario when Road Rash gets on the floor when the fight starts?
The best case scenario is if you imagine a field full of like pee-wee football players versus a full-size football player, that's the effect we're going for. Impossible to move, just brute force pushing things, crushing things into walls, and then applying our kill saw.
All of our opponents are limited by the friction between the floor and their wheels. And we know, hearing reports from other competitors and testing it out a little bit ourselves, that's extremely low in the battle box. They'll only be able to put out maybe 100 to 150 pounds worth of pushing force depending on how good their wheels are. We know in every circumstance with the steel floor, we're going to be getting at least 100 with these guys in just straight pushing force. Nobody will be able to push us around or lift us up.
We're no longer friction limited, we're flux coupling limited.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Well, good luck, and I can't wait to see you guys hopefully in the battle box. Thank you so much. So I'm now here with Jerry from Team Hammer Time, and your robot is called?
Sub-Zero.
Now, does it do anything cold?
No, not anymore. It used to be a CO2 system in it, and that's why we had called it Sub-Zero, because of the exhaust gas would come out 100 below zero.
So this is an existing design that you've modified for the season of BattleBots. What is? Explain the whole system.
Well, it's a high pressure nitrogen system. You know, the rule stated no more CO2, so we went to nitrogen. And what it does is it's a launch bot. It runs at 1,500 PSI. We have a 3,000 PSI bottle in here, and it goes through the regulator and a buffer tank, and then we feed the 2 rams at 1,500 PSI with about 20,000 pounds of thrust, vertical. We try to get under our opponent with our scoop and just launch them, 10 feet in the air.
And flip them upside down.
Yeah.
You guys are coming on later?
We're going to be fighting, actually, we're scheduled to fight tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, good luck in your battle, and good luck getting this working. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Those robots are awesome. There's so much activity going on in this pit. We only got a chance to chat with a few of the robot builders, check out their robots, but there's so much more. Like I said, over 50 robots competing in Season 2. You're going to have to watch the show to meet the rest of them, but we're going to stick around, catch some fights, and you'll find more of that coverage here on Tested. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.